The spark why starting small is everything. Most people never begin because they've been sold a lie. The lie that you need to be ready, that you need to have it all figured out before you start. So they wait. They wait for the perfect moment, the perfect mindset, the perfect motivation. But the truth is, the perfect moment never comes. Real growth starts when you stop waiting and start moving, even if it's slow, even if it's messy, even if it's small. The spark that changes your life doesn't show up with fireworks. It shows up quietly, in frustration. It shows up in that one night where you've had enough. You look around at your life and say, this can't be it. I want more. I need more. And in that one moment of raw honesty, something shifts. Take the first small step. You don't tell the world, you just do it. That's the spark. That's where real transformation begins. Not with noise, but with quiet resolve. People love to talk about their success once they've made it, the money, the fame, the lifestyle. But what they don't talk about is the beginning. When they were broke, when they were doubted, when they had no plan, no audience, no help, when the only thing they had was a decision. I'm not going to quit on myself this time. And it wasn't a grand moment. It was small. A morning routine, a journal entry, showing up to the gym, sending one email. They weren't making headlines. They were just choosing not to give up. That's the part no one claps for, and that's why it's the most important part. We think starting small means we're weak, but we're not good enough yet. But the truth is, starting small means you're strong enough to begin when no one's watching. It means you believe in something bigger, even if the results haven't shown up yet. And that belief, that's what separates the dreamers from the doers. Because dreamers talk about what they'll do one day, but doers show up today, even if it's only for 5 minutes. Don't underestimate what 5 focused minutes can do. 5 minutes of deep work every day turns into hours of mastery. 5 minutes of reading becomes knowledge over time. 5 minutes of stretching, of planning, of showing up, it compounds. This is how lives change, not overnight, but over time. Tiny effort, stacked with discipline, becomes momentum, and momentum is how you escape zero. Let me be honest with you, won't feel ready, you'll feel scared, unsure, even embarrassed. You'll wonder, who am I to try this? What if I fail? But the better question is, what if you don't? What if you stay where you are for the next 5 years just because you were afraid to start? That should scare you more. Because staying stuck is also a choice, and every day you don't move, you reinforce that choice. Look, every person who made it, they started before they were ready. They posted content when no one watched. They trained when no one believed. They built skills that nobody saw, and day by day, they became undeniable. Not because they were special, but because they refused to stay average. They didn't need permission. They didn't need approval. They just needed one good reason, and they gave it to themselves. You don't need 1 million followers to start. You don't need a business loan. You don't need to wait for January 1st. You just need to decide, I'm not staying here anymore. This isn't about motivation, it's about self-respect. It's about honoring your potential enough to stop lying to yourself. You know you've got more in you. You've always known, that's why you feel frustrated. That's why you can't ignore this anymore. Start with one change, one habit, one uncomfortable step forward. Will it be enough? Not today, but that's not the point. The point is to break the pattern. To stop sitting still while your dreams rot in silence. You start small so you can stay consistent. And once you get consistent, the small becomes unstoppable. It's not magic, it's math. Effort plus time equals progress. That's the formula, and it starts with you showing up today. If all you have is a little time, use it. If all you have is your phone, record. If all you have is a notebook, write. If all you have is energy for one small step, take it, because the moment you move, the moment you create, you shift from being a dreamer to being a builder, and that's the shift that changes everything. You're not too late, you're not too old, you're not too broken, you're just early in your process. And if you've got the courage to take the first step, no matter how small, then congratulations, you've already done the hardest part. You've sparked the flame, now it's up to you to protect it. The climb, embracing the process. Nobody talks about the middle, they talk about the start, the spark, and they love talking about the end, the success. But the middle, that's where most people quit. Because the middle is where it gets hard. It's where results are slow, where doubts get loud, and where motivation starts to die. This is where the real test happens, not at the starting line, but during the climb. You've taken the first step, you've started small, but now reality kicks in. You realize this journey isn't about one big push. It's about showing up again and again, even when it sucks, even when you're tired, even when nobody's watching. This is the part where you fight with your mind. The part where you build discipline not because it's fun, but because it's necessary. And that's the difference between people who succeed and people who just wish they did. One group is willing to endure the climb. There are no shortcuts here. There's no viral moment that can skip this phase. If you want to grow, you have to stay in the game, day after day, even when you don't see progress, even when it feels pointless. That's what separates the real from the temporary. You're not just building habits, you're building identity. Every rep you do in silence, every time you keep going when you could have quit, that's who you're becoming. And trust me, that version of you is worth it. See, the climb is uncomfortable. It exposes everything you've ignored, your excuses, your mindset, your laziness, your lack of focus. But instead of running from it, you've got to face it. That discomfort, that's not a problem. That's proof you're growing. If it was easy, everyone would do it. But growth lives in the hard moments. Progress is earned where it's painful. And pain, when respected, becomes fuel. There will be days where you feel like it's not working. You'll question if you're even on the right path. You'll want to go back to comfort, to distractions, to excuses, to whatever was easy. But comfort doesn't build legacy. It doesn't build strength. If it's easy, it's not taking you anywhere. The real reward is hidden in the struggle. And only the ones who climb get to claim it. Look around. The most successful people you admire, they didn't get lucky. They endured. They climbed when nobody saw them. They didn't get applause. They got criticized, ignored, doubted. But they kept moving. Because they weren't chasing validation, they were chasing evolution. They understood the game is about longevity, not speed. And that mindset, that's rare. You want to stand out, then learn to love the process. Fall in love with being consistent, not just being hyped. Fall in love with progress, even if it's small. Stop looking for the big moment. Life isn't a movie. It's not about one scene. It's about every quiet day you chose not to give up, every time you woke up and gave your best when nobody was watching. That's the real win. The climb builds trust in yourself. You prove to yourself that you're dependable. That when things get hard, you don't fold. That when it takes time, you still believe. And once you have that kind of belief in yourself, nobody can stop you. Not opinions, not rejection, not failure. Because you've already done the hardest thing. You stayed in the fight. When quitting was easy. Let this chapter be your reminder. Growth doesn't feel good while it's happening, but it pays off in ways you can't imagine. It sharpens your mind. It develops grit. It builds your reputation with yourself. So don't run from the process. Respect it. Work with it. Trust it. Because the climb is what transforms you. The climb is what qualifies you. The climb is what prepares you to handle the success when it finally arrives. And one day, when you're standing at the top, you'll look back and thank yourself for not quitting during the middle, for showing up when no one cared, for giving effort even when results didn't come, because that's what got you there. Not a spark, not luck, but a long, lonely, difficult climb, and the courage to keep going. The shift, building real momentum. Most people think momentum is a feeling like motivation, but it's not. Momentum is built, not felt, and it doesn't come from doing one thing perfectly. It comes from doing small things consistently. That's the shift that most people never make. They think they have to go big to move forward. The truth is, you just have to move every single day with purpose. In the beginning, your actions feel small, insignificant, like they don't matter. You post a video, no one watches. You write something, no one replies. You go to the gym, nothing changes. That's the danger zone. Because it's here, in this quiet, unrecognized effort, that most people give up. They think nothing's working, when in fact, everything is working, just not visibly yet. Growth happens beneath the surface first. You plant, then you water, and only later do you see the bloom. The shift happens when you stop expecting instant results and start respecting the process. When you stop chasing motivation and start building rhythm, because rhythm beats motivation every time. Motivation fades. Life gets in the way. Emotions change. But rhythm keeps you moving even when your feelings don't want to. And once you build that rhythm, you build momentum, and momentum makes hard things easier. Think about it like pushing a heavy wheel. At first, it's hard. It barely moves. But once it starts turning even slowly, it gets lighter. Each push adds to the last, and soon, the weight that once felt impossible starts rolling on its own. That's momentum. You don't wake up with it, you earn it through repetition, through action, through grit. This is where you separate from the average. Average people only act when they feel like it. Driven people act until they feel the momentum. They show up when it's boring, when it's hard, when it's quiet. That's the shift. That's the inner decision. I'll move even when I don't feel ready. because once you prove to yourself that you can act without needing a perfect moment, you become unstoppable. And here's the truth most don't talk about. Momentum isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. It's not the crowd clapping, it's you waking up earlier without snoozing. It's drinking water instead of soda. It's saying no to distractions. These don't go viral, but they change your life. Why? Because they build identity. And identity shapes action. When your identity shifts from someone trying to someone becoming, your life starts to accelerate. This is also where the resistance gets stronger. The more momentum you build, the more life will test you. You'll face distractions, temptations, and moments of self-doubt, not because you're weak, but because you're entering a new level. The old version of you will fight to stay alive. But if you keep going, if you don't break your rhythm, that old version will eventually die off, and a new you will rise. One that doesn't flinch. One that doesn't need to restart every Monday. One that doesn't live off someday. And once you reach that level of momentum, you become dangerous. Why? Because now you've built something even failure can't break. Consistency. You've trained your mind to do hard things. You've shown your body how to respond without hesitation. You've taken control. And in a world full of distractions, confusion, and noise, that kind of control is rare. That kind of person is rare. Let me be honest with you, momentum doesn't make you superhuman. It makes you real, focused, disciplined. It doesn't remove your problems, it makes you capable of solving them. It doesn't erase fear. It teaches you how to move forward with it. It doesn't give you easy wins, it gives you the strength to earn them. And that's why it matters. You want your life to change. Stop trying to win the lottery. Stop chasing big moments. And start stacking small wins daily, repeatedly, quietly, relentlessly. Because small wins stack up faster than you think. A page read becomes a book finished. A dollar saved becomes an emergency fund. A push-up becomes a physique. A video becomes a brand. And a habit becomes a lifestyle. The shift, Bauer G, isn't magic, it's maturity. It's realizing that greatness isn't an event, it's a process. And you either show up for that process or you don't. And the ones who do, they build momentum so powerful that even setbacks can't stop it. Even bad days don't derail it. Because once you build real momentum, you become a machine. You start moving differently, thinking sharper, speaking clearer, choosing better. You start becoming the version of you that you were always meant to be. The one that doesn't just dream, but does. The one that doesn't rely on chance, but on discipline. That's the power of momentum. That's the shift. The fall isn't the end. Asterisk. Maybe you thought the hardest part was starting. Maybe you believed the first steps would break you. And they did almost, but you kept going anyway. Through the hesitation, through the noise, through every voice that whispered, "You're not good enough." You tuned it all out. You laced up, showed up, and kept your head down, building something out of what used to be nothing. And then came the fall, not the kind that makes headlines, not the kind that gets sympathy. No, the quiet fall, the kind that creeps in when no one's looking, when you've been doing everything right and yet nothing's moving. The doors don't open, the messages go unanswered, the efforts multiply, but the results vanish. You're left staring at the walls you thought you had already broken down, wondering if any of it was real in the first place. You thought the climb was over, but this is where the real climb begins. Because it's easy to be motivated when things are new. Easy to show up when you're making progress. When people are watching, when there's applause. But what happens when the applause stops? When the camera turns off? When the likes don't come? What happens when the progress halts? The energy fades, and it feels like you're walking in place. This is where people break. This is where the dreamers turn into doubters. This is where most give up and call it realism, but not you. Because you've felt something different. You've seen glimpses of who you could become. And even if it's just a flicker in a long night, it's enough to remind you that this pain isn't punishment, it's preparation. It's the hard truth no one tells you when you start chasing something bigger than yourself. That somewhere along the way, you're going to break, and that break won't be the end. It'll be the beginning of who you really are. The fall humbles you. It strips you of your ego, of your expectations, of your fantasy timelines. It burns away everything shallow, and what's left is raw, real, and ready to be rebuilt. That's why it hurts. That's why it feels like grief. Because a version of you is dying in the fall, the one who thought it would be easier, the one who needed approval, the one who feared judgment. That version needed to die for the real you to rise. And yet, most people don't stay in the fire long enough to become gold. They jump out. They run, they make peace with comfort, even if it means settling for a life they don't love. But you're different, because you're still here, even if it's messy. Even if you're crawling, even if you've fallen 100 times and doubt is now your shadow, you haven't walked. away. That counts for more than you know. Because resilience isn't loud, it's not dramatic, it's not cinematic. It's the quiet decision to keep showing up, long after the feeling of motivation is gone. Falling isn't failure, it's feedback. It's the universe asking you, how bad do you want this? Not in a romantic way, but in a raw, no excuses kind of way. Are you here to try, or are you here to transform? That's what the fall reveals. It doesn't care about your talent, it doesn't care about your goals. It only wants to know one thing. Will you rise again? Not because you have to, but because you choose to. Let that sink in, because it changes everything.